clicked it. I started recording. Hello. Hello, YouTube, and welcome to a live recording of this video alongside Twitch chat. You can't see them, but they are there. I promise you they're there. They never leave me alone. So, we're going to go over the development manifesto, and I'm going to give you the quick bullet points of what my thoughts are on here so that you guys can all criticize me for being wrong or hold me up on a pedestal of golden godhood for being correct. Your choice, there's no middle ground. So, we're going to start with a bit of a rant here, which might not surprise you. Okay, let's preface it with something nice. You know, you start with something nice, you put something bad in the middle, and you end with something nice. That's how you give feedback. So we're going to start by saying I like the majority of these changes. I actually do think most of them were justified, and even the thing I'm going to rant about, I can understand nerfing the general archetype. Let's just get into it. Archmage needed a nerf. Mana stacking builds were too powerful in too many different ways. You stack mana and you get damage, and you get defenses, and you get EHP, and you get recovery. You just get everything you need from stacking mana. So it makes a lot of sense, if they do want to shake up the meta, that they're going to change mana builds. And the nerfs to Archmage specifically are great. I'm on board with those. Wonderful. Lowering the damage, sure. Arcane Surge, though. This baffles me. I do not understand why we are specifically nerfing Arcane Surge. I understand wanting to go after mana recovery, and relatively free mana recovery, sure. But what this is going to actually accomplish in the coming patch is maybe not going to line up with exactly GGG's intentions, because it will be a blanket nerf to mana recovery across Archmage builds in general that all used an Arcane Surge and a high-level one with Arcane Cloak. But what you're going to see is basically an extinction of the race of mana-focused Hierophants. Because the 50% Arcane Surge effect on the Ascendancy will be reduced to rubble and barely useful at all, and the changes to the Arcane Surge notable on the tree as well, presumably, which is in their neck of the woods and was one of their more powerful tools, also going to be gone. Well, not gone, it still does something, but effectively dead for a really high mana build at high levels. So, yeah, while this does sort of blanket nerf Archmage, which may have been the intention, I think the blanket is a bit heavy over where Hierophant is, and Necromancer is still an excellent Archmage build, even with the nerfs to her mana recovery last league, because her mana recovery is now going to be better than Hierophant's again, unless we see further changes to the Hierophant Ascendancy. So, hopefully we do see some sort of change or just complete rework of the Arcane Surge focus notables in the Hierophant Ascendancy, because otherwise I think it's going to be a fairly dead breed. Let's move on to some of the other stuff, though, and not spend the whole video talking about Arcane Surge. Very briefly, I just want to touch on the Second Wind changes for anyone who didn't understand the ramifications of them. Second Wind is going to be massively less powerful now. The mana multi-change is not huge, though impactful depending on how much mana you had reserved. If you were working with like 30 mana and you were some sort of melee build trying to dash around, it could be a problem. But more importantly, the change to being reduced cooldown recovery rate makes it honestly, like maybe not even a tool you want to use in a Warcry build, which is where it saw the most use, or a Slam build, I should say. Speaking of Slam builds, Seismic Cry got absolutely gutted, to no one but perhaps my surprise, as I didn't really think Slam builds were going to see too much of a nerf going into this league, but I'm certainly not unhappy to see it, as that's going to shake up the hardcore meta for sure. Talking about Second Wind again and jumping back to move skills, I've been using Shield Charge this whole time because I'm old-fashioned and I kept using Shield Charge anyway, even with the buffs to like Smoke Mine and Flame Dash, so I'm used to it. So cool, I get a buff. What else do I have here? I have a bunch of notes. I want to go through them all, but I'm not going to spend too long on any individual point except for the Arcane Surge rant. Onslaught is now harder to obtain, so the fact that Raiders' Onslaught nodes got nerfed is kind of offset by that, because there's more value in just getting Onslaught now, even if it's just part of your Ascendancy. Though I do think we'll see a lot more people going for the Onslaught craft on boots, because you're still going to want it in your build, and it's going to probably be worth the affix. Speaking of mana builds, as we were earlier, the Enduring Flask change is more of a hit to something like Archmage or Mind Over Matter, and I'm much more in favor of that, by the way. Like, the Enduring Mana Flask change is what the Arcane Surge change should be, where it's this, like, sweeping nerf to Archmage builds, especially, you know, entry-level power Archmage builds, that's going to affect everyone roughly equally, though, of course, Pathfinders got more use out of the Mana Flasks than anyone else. Whereas the Arcane Surge change is just, it feels like a laser beam on the forehead of every Hierophant everywhere. But I said I wouldn't keep ranting on that. As far as mana costs are concerned, I think Life Tap will show up in more builds going forwards. Less of an opportunity cost to Life Tap now that most support gems are going to be at a similar damage multiplier, assuming it doesn't get changed. And more people need to spend mana for more things with triggered skills changing, so keep Life Tap in mind when you're making your future builds. And let's get down to the skills that we have any sort of information on down here at the bottom, because I actually have a surprisingly large amount of things to say about this little block of text at the end. For one thing, thank you for the raid, Ziggy. I'm recording a video, but thank you for the raid. I appreciate it. For one thing, I'm not going to read chat right now because I am recording a video, but for one thing, I do think that the Lightning Tendrils changes are not going to save it, and that's a pretty easy observation to make, but I have more constructive criticism than just that. Lightning Tendrils has this identity where you're trying to channel it and get those big old bursts, right? Like, that's the fantasy they're trying to embody with Lightning Tendrils. They made the bursts more damaging, but that isn't the problem. The problem is that the payoffs are too infrequent. You get Lightning Tendrils bursts once every 4 seconds, for those of you who are not familiar with the gem, which I will assume is all of you. When do you want to sit in one place in Path of Exile for 4 seconds? If they were to have the damage of the additional stronger bursts from Lightning Tendrils, but make it happen once every 2 seconds, maybe then you might see a person play it. Anyways, enough on Lightning Tendrils. Things I'm excited for. I've criticized a lot of things so far. Let's get into the things that I'm really excited for going into the next patch, and just from what we have here in the development of Manifesto. Words are tough. The ailment change is really big for alternate ailments. Well, the ailment change is really big for a few things. One, seeing the threshold and seeing the impact of your ailments is massive, and I love that. And Zvicker?
I have no clue what I'm doing, but it looks awesome.
I don't plan on making a guide for that at the moment, but I can answer the question more in full after the video is done recording. But yes, seeing the effect of ailments on enemies is great, and also making it easier to apply ailments is a huge buff to Brittle, Sap, and Scorch. And I really want to make a build with Brittle, Sap, and Scorch. I've been trying to figure out a Leadership's Price build for a couple leagues now, and they've buffed it twice. They made it easier to apply ailments to endgame bosses, and they, last league, made it so you can anoint Corrupted Amulets. So look out for that build next league. I'm probably going to make it. As far as what I'm going to make it on, I'm not sure, but probably going to make that build. The Explosive Arrow buff is a buff to Explosive Arrow Bleed, which was kind of a meme build that I played a couple leagues back, but has been buffed in a number of ways since then, similarly to a Leadership's Price Ailments build. It got buffed with the changes to Champion, making Champion Totem builds even better. It got buffed with some of the changes to Fizz.multi on the tree and such, and just now it got buffed with just a straight-up buff to Explosive Arrow. It's 5% more with per arrow instead of 3, which doesn't seem like a lot, 3 to 5. But that's per arrow, and you can get up to, I think, 15 or 20, something like that. So it's actually a pretty massive buff. So that might be my second build of the league, because I don't think it would be a great starter. I hope that Seismic Trap will be good. I've tried to make Seismic Trap good before. I've done it like 2 or 3 times now, and every time it has just ended up worse than like an Explosive Trap or a Flamethrower Trap build. I'm not going to be suckered in again. I'm not going to league start it, but I really do hope it'll be good. I wish good things onto Seismic Trap. And traps in general seem like they'll be a pretty significant part of the next meta, even if only because GGG has not so subtly hinted that people should play them. Anyways, that's my thoughts on the Manifesto. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did go through it a little quickly, but I wanted to keep the video relatively short. And also, I got excited by the Ziggy raid. What can I say? I love Ziggy D. I love him. You should check him out. You can find him on YouTube. I'm sure you know about that guy. He's a wonderful guy. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a nice evening.